What's really interesting to me is that this is a revision off of an original. I'm sorry, did you want to ask something?
No, I was just trying to see you.
Oh.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask you possibly about the original story and the revision or the mythology that you created based off of the original, and if you could talk a little bit about it and Narcissus.
Sure. So, the Narcissus myth has been around for a long time. It's pre-Roman, but Ovid made it his own. He fleshed it out and he combined it with the Echo myth, which had been unrelated until then. So, in Ovid's Metamorphoses, Echo is a nymph who falls in love with him, and they never really interact very much, but he wants nothing to do with anybody. So she pretty much wastes away to nothing but a voice, and it's an etiological myth, so that's why they're echoes, apparently. Which is kind of interesting, but then some other guy falls in love with Narcissus, and again is spurned, and prays for revenge to Nemesis, and so Narcissus falls in love with his own reflection, and then dies and becomes a flower. So that's all very well, but it's somehow unsatisfying. It's like there are these two stories and they barely link up, and the ideologies are kind of unsatisfying. And I sort of felt like there was something more there. And so I played with it and stared at it, and then I decided that it seemed like it really gave up its real structure if you change things around so that Echo is the mirror.
Anyone else? Besides me again? I have one more, and then I'm out. So does anyone want a buffer? Okay. Another interesting question is about the methods to translation. Translation is always a tricky subject. And I believe that the title to your piece is really interesting, and maybe you could talk about it and how that was translated.
Thanks. The French title is Les Intermittences du Cap, which literally becomes the intermittencies of Icarus, which still makes, parses in English, but intermittency is such a awkward and opaque word, whereas in French, a variation on it is often used to refer to the large social class of people who who don't really have steady jobs, but are gig-based life. So it has it's much more common in French. So you'd want to try to find something also more common in English. But the interesting thing is that Jose Saramago, the Nobel Prize winner, wrote a book, a novel called literally in Portuguese, The Intermittencies of Death, which the great Margaret Yolcosta translated. Well, actually, in this case, I'm not sure whether what she did. She probably suggested titles to the translator because this is a book that came out with different titles in the UK and the US. So the UK title became Death at Intervals, and the US title, Death with Interruptions. So I was really drawn to that at first as a title, Icarus with Interruptions, since it has since the French and Portuguese, there have that cognate word, intermittencies. But the more I thought about the story, the more it seemed less to be about the interruptions than the occasions. I also thought about, Icarus interrupted, like girl interrupted. But I decided to go more Ann Tyler instead, with an occasional Icarus, because it. But titles are always fun because they have to be so concise.
Icarus interrupted.
Good. Now it's like I've created a visual in my head, and it's so weird. Maybe if the other two could share how the departure worked, really. I mean, I'm sure that the basis for the story kind of evolved after you worked within. There's certain stylistic choices that you've made, very liberal ones. And if you guys could talk about it. how it's different from the myth, basically.
I don't think that's really what I was doing. I was really playing with ideas of paradise, with California, the myth of California, and the story started actually. How many of you have been to the Mystery Spot or know the Mystery Spot in Santa Cruz? No?
Yes.
So you've seen it on stickers on cars, the Mystery Spot. Well, if you go to the Mystery Spot, it's sort of like, have you ever been to Knott's Berry Farm and there was sort of this crooked house and the perspectives are strange and off? Well, I think that's really what's being done at the Mystery Spot. And they tell you it's magnetic and they put you on two stumps and, you know, the short person, me, is always taller than the other or as tall as the other person and those kinds of things. And so I was really amused when my colleague and feminist studies scholar, Angela Arandaker, said that the Mystery Spot was a dangerous place to go, you know, that it was a magnetic spot. And so I got stuck with that. And then I started to think about mystery spots and spots. And things grew from that point. And I also started to think about Santa Cruz, the crossroads, and all the things that we think about in terms of, you know, that place as a location. Those of us who live there and those who are outside of it. So that's, I mean, maybe what's happening there.
As I said earlier, the story really came about thinking about what happens next in this myth. It was interesting that Jose Saramago was brought up because I was trying to ape his style more a little bit in this. I think he, as a stylist, even when his novels are set in the contemporary world, you get the sense that it's a couple of elderly men, sort of long-winded, but great storytellers sitting around, sort of collectively narrating the story. And I think it's a really effective way of giving this old-fashioned sensibility to even modern stories. And so, given that this is a very old-fashioned story, I tried to play around with some of those run-on sentences and the repetitions of sort of he has this trick where he will go through maybe 5 or 6 different words, and you almost sort of trying to find the right one to describe an incident or a moment, a color maybe, and you can almost, while you read him, you get the sense that you're seeing the writer at work, sort of trying to find the right word, and you almost get the sense that in all the stories there is no right word, that he's sort of playing with the failure of language to honestly express anything. And I guess stylistically that was something I was interested in this piece.
Well, if that's it, thank you so much for coming. They'll be up front for 10, 15 minutes if you're interested in having your book signed. And thank you so much for coming.